Good morning. My name is Gia Mangino, and I'll be the moderator for today's event. We'd like to thank you for joining us today for our live product demo, the All-in-One TIBCO Monitor. Today's speaker is Glyn Edevane, SL Senior Solutions Engineer. Glyn has worked with mainframe, distributed, and cloud-based systems in a career stretching back over 20 years. Throughout the event, please feel free to submit your questions in the panel located at the right-hand side of your screen. We will answer as many as possible after the presentation. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Glyn. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. This is one of a series of the RTView based webinars. The idea is to talk to people within the TIBCO realm, those people responsible for the support and the well-being of applications dependent upon TIBCO technologies. And the subject specifically for today is talk about the RTView All-in-One TIBCO Monitor. So today we're going to be talking about how with RTView EM, or Enterprise Monitor, we're able to correlate across the various different TIBCO technologies, and in the process of doing that, provide greater operational insight and promote application stability. So today we're really going to be talking about why it's important for companies to invest in a comprehensive monitoring strategy to support these mission-critical applications that depend upon the TIBCO environment that you manage. We're going to talk about how the benefits of having a centralized monitoring system versus many disparate tools that are spread across the different technologies. We're going to show you that with RTView properly implemented, you can actually predict alert conditions. You'll be the one that will see that a problem is about to happen with sufficient time to go in there, take corrective, take remedial action, so that your users never are aware that there was going to even be a problem. So this helps you convert your activities from reactive, responsive to predictive and proactive activities. Net result will save your company from expensive and often embarrassing service outages. So there's a few facts of life that we just simply can't avoid. Right? Monitoring multiple TIBCO technologies isn't easy. Unlike perhaps monitoring a database system or monitoring a Unix environment or a Windows environment, the different elements that come into play in a TIBCO environment are really very dynamic and very different. So one minute you're managing a messaging system where we're talking about the flow of messages through an environment. Next moment, you're working on a much more complex integration system where you've got a lot of work processes happening, all of which are very time dependent. And then of course you've got call outs to some of these very advanced technologies such as active data grids, and also upstream and downstream systems, database and application servers that you're not responsible for, but they definitely have an impact on the TIBCO environment. And as you look around, you'll realize, as we have, that there really aren't very many professional grade tools that can help you cope with this. There's not very many ways that you can centralize this kind of information. These applications that you're responsible for, the ones that will get all of the attention should there be a problem, are distributed across an enterprise, and oftentimes that enterprise is spread out globally, different time zones, different cultures. Not only that, but the environments that you're working with are often completely different in the way they're configured, and the demands being placed on them often vary greatly. So you'll see that you'll have a shared environment, and many of these applications or these services, the needs are different. Some of them are batch, some of them are transactional. Some of them are customer facing and therefore absolutely critical to the health of the business, versus management reporting, which might get a lot of attention, but they're really not that critical to the health of the enterprise. And then of course we have time elements. Some of these are monthly reports, some are on demand. and some are customer service. So really the needs and the technologies and the environments are very, very different. It's a very highly dynamic, high-risk environment, and I think we all agree that the opportunities for failure occur every single day. So of course, TIBCO customers are our primary customer base. And so recently, we've been talking to these customers and we've been, having a few surveys. And what we've found in a nutshell is that for non-RTView users, for non-RTView environments, 8 out of 10 of the operations teams rely solely on Hawk or the consoles that come with the solution. At the same time, 10 out of 10 said that they were responsible for managing multiple different TIBCO technologies all at the same time. All of them agreed that it makes really no sense at all that applications that generate millions of dollars in revenue are dependent upon basically freeware monitoring tools. And these freeware monitoring tools were never really designed to do monitoring. Monitoring was something that was added on. They're more for administration. And so really, in terms of diagnosing a problem or creating some documentation to help you escalate a ticket, it's just simply not there. It's not really the reason that they exist. So some basic problems that you face with this console approach is that you've got a very limited view. So either one server or one technology at a time. This means that you can't organize, you can't group these resources together, you can't filter, you can't, in effect, control what you can't manage, and vice versa. You've absolutely got no idea how one technology is related to the other in terms of any given application. And it's normally at that application level that you're having to deal with the user. Not having this context means you're really not getting any of the operational insights that you need, and it is very, very expensive. You spend many hours trying to understand what the root cause of the problem is, when that time should really be spent fixing the problem. The other thing is that you have a different console for each TIBCO technology. It's not very easy to transition from messaging to integration. The screens are different, the whole arrangement is different, the thought processes behind building the screens are different. It's really not a very simple tool to use. Also, it means that collaboration across support teams is just simply not effective. When you're asking people who are normally used to working on a Unix system to come and take a look at what's going on a BW system, it really is not very intuitive at all. The other problem with a console approach, where it's really meant for administration, not for monitoring, is that you have no historical data. So when there is a problem, you really want to know, well, how did I get here? Have I been here before? What steps did I take in the past? Also, when you're handling this issue, when you're handling this SEV1 problem, you really need to pretty much immediately know as well, is there something that triggered this? Is this an effect or is this a cause? Has this problem been growing since before I started my shift? I have really no way of knowing without having that historical context. Also, I need to know, is this problem I'm facing in TIBCO, has it really been created by something upstream or downstream? Is it a database response time issue? Is it a WebLogic server issue? When you only have individual consoles for each individual technology, and you have no way of looking across or up and down the stack, you're very limited in what information is available to you. So in a nutshell, without the proper monitoring tools, preventative monitoring is very difficult. The most you can do is be reactive. When you do have a problem, because you don't know the cause of that problem, initially you have to call in everybody that might even be involved in it And this is what leads to those SEV1 bridge calls that go on for many, many hours. You have 10 or 11 people on a call where nobody really knows where the problem is. They spend most of the time proving that the problem isn't with them. We all know that fingers get pointed to middleware. And so middleware is faced with having to prove it's not a middleware issue before anybody will even look anywhere else. And then finally, more strategically, you're not able to manage the company's resources very effectively. You're not able to predict the capacity requirements. Really, it becomes a sort of a success through failure. You have to keep repeatedly running out of resources, then getting more resources, and then waiting again until you run out of resources in another area. And that's that sort of stumbling forward approach that really does give IT management a lot of issues. But when you have proper monitoring tools, you can see these hotspots developing. You can see problems are building up. You can step in and take corrective action, increase resources or move some of the demand so that your users were never even aware that there could have been a problem. If there is a war room situation, one of those SEV1 bridge calls, you're able to go in there adequately armed with all of the documentation you need to say, look, this environment is very healthy. On the other hand, when I look at the app server, I can see that the traffic coming from the app server has increased threefold in the last hour. Something's going wrong at the application level. Also, monitoring becomes automatic, a simple part of your daily routine. It becomes something that is typically on the right-hand side of your second monitor, so that when a heat map changes condition, it goes from all green to the odd patch of orange and red, you can immediately understand, okay, there's an issue. Intuitive monitoring platform like RTView makes monitoring very easy. It's also easy to collaborate. You're looking at a common interface. It's easy for somebody to look at what's going on with a VM through the same set of similar screens that you would be looking at for BW. Collaboration and communication becomes a lot more effective. So a little bit about how RTView Enterprise Monitor works. Just very, very briefly, the way that RTView works is that we tap into all of these different TIBCO and some non-TIBCO technologies. So here you'll just see a small subset. So adapters, business events, active spaces, BusinessWorks, of course, EMS. We also can tap into Hawk. But we also are able to connect into the host information. So the VM host, the WebLogic, the WebSphere, the JBoss applications, and the database system. So by bringing these low-level metrics in to RTView, performing all of the process and all of the analysis on the RTView server, we remove any overhead from the TIBCO host, and all of the work is done on the RTView server, all of the analytics, and we're able to then present that information out in a way that's very useful to individuals based on their profile, so that a support engineer has a different view than an application development engineer, and all of this is available through RTView. The reason it's really important to create a complete and composite picture of all of the elements that support an application is because all of those elements are interdependent. You may be responsible for BW and EMS, for example, but you know that BW and EMS is receiving traffic, receiving demand from external systems, and it's also the source of traffic and demand for other external systems. So you really do need to understand where in that flow the TIBCO stack belongs. This is only available when you have that composite picture, and that composite picture can only be created by combining the different elements together in a single set of screens. The other thing that we need to start thinking about is to align ourselves with the business. We really should start focusing, instead of just fixing problems as they arise, we need to think about taking a more strategic approach. We need to start thinking about how we can improve the application stability, how we can improve the business service that we're providing. We do this through centralizing performance metrics. We do this by predicting alert conditions before they happen and taking the corrective action. We also need to work towards pinpointing those recurring problems. We need to identify that. We need to understand the patterns of behavior within our environment. This is practically impossible with a console approach. You need that context and you need that history. And then finally, we need to be more responsible about the money we spend within IT. We need to be able to provide justification to the business factors of our expenditure and show that they are in fact getting absolutely great value for money. So again, being able to centralize this information will have a huge impact on the application stability. It'll increase customer satisfaction. It'll decrease management friction. And also very, very important is that the number of calls you get during the middle of the night will drop drastically. And I think everybody will agree that's a good thing. So I think the approach that we're going to take today to talk to you more about RTView is show you how you'd actually use RTView. So the idea is that the next set of screens will show you how you would use RTView in a typical day. Okay, that's the idea. So it's a practical approach. So your day would normally be responsive. When you're coming in, you're looking at emails, you're looking at your alert screens, you're trying to identify what problems exist, what problems have been passed to you from the previous engineer, and you're trying to resolve or escalate those problems. And that's going to take the initial part of your day. But then once that's done, you'll want to take a more strategic view. You'll want to go back and understand what has been happening in the recent history. And you'll want to say, okay, can I see anything that's likely to cause a problem in the future? And if I can, what steps can I take to avoid those problems? So this is the first screen. This is your landing page. When you first log on to RTView, this is most likely what you'd see. So down the left-hand side, we have a listing of all of the different groupings that have been created. Remember, this is all profile driven. This is driven by your needs. Okay, so you'll see that we've been able to separate out the different technology groups and the different application groups. In addition to that, we're able to highlight those areas that reveal that there's in fact a problem occurring underneath within that infrastructure. On the right-hand side, we see a heat map. This is basically showing you the hotspots. What we'd like to see is everything in a green state, which means everything's go, everything's within tolerance, everything's working just fine. However, in this case, we see that something's changed from green to orange and then to close to red. So this is in an unhealthy state. Now, the other thing is that because you now have a really good understanding of the relative importance of these applications to the business, when you are faced with multiple problems, you're able to prioritize intelligently instead of just dealing with all of the red alerts at the same time, or dealing with them based on what is the oldest alert. You're actually able to sort of apply some business logic and say, okay, this one is a customer-facing application. So even though it's a newer issue, this is the one I need to hit on first. So it helps you decide which applications get the priority and allows you to quickly identify the problem. So from here we can take a closer look at the detail of the TIBCO applications. So now we're filtering out everything that doesn't run through TIBCO. So these are your responsibility, and this is what your focus needs to be on. You're not wanting to get distracted by applications that really don't touch TIBCO. So looking here, we can see that accounting is actually having a bit of a problem. This is something that we need to drill down on. So I can simply click on that line item, and now what I'm working with is a filtered out list of just those resources that support accounting. So I may have started off at that dashboard level, that heat map level, with looking across thousands of different resources, thousands of different components. Within 3 clicks now, I've not only identified which business service is having a problem, but I'm now just looking at those components that could be responsible for that. I've filtered out everything that's extraneous. There's no noise here. I can also see at the bottom of the screen a sort of high-level alert text. This tells me, okay, these are the types of alerts that I'm having related to this service. So I can drill down one more step and I can see, okay, we've got a problem with this BW server. When I look into it, I see, oh, this BW engine has actually failed. It's stopped. It's not running at all. So now I can go in and I can look at that error message. I can see when it actually happened. And I've been able to do this with just 4 clicks. Now the same thing would apply if this engine was one engine out of hundreds of engines, or it was one process out of thousands of processes, or perhaps one queue out of tens of thousands of queues. It really doesn't matter. The same drill down system will get me to the failing component within just a few clicks. Okay. So that's the first mission. We have reduced the amount of time it's taken us to find the failing component to a few clicks. We've got documentation, we've got screenshots, we've got URLs that we can copy and paste into a trouble ticket, and we can get the escalation point identified and pass this problem on to them very, very quickly, very efficiently, with information that they can actually use. Right. So now let's say, okay, well, yeah, great, we're all happy within the TIBCO world. But we talked earlier about context. You know, what does it look like when I want to step outside of TIBCO, when I want to see the systems that interact with my environment? So the self-same nav tree shows the alerts on the infrastructure, and the same drill downs give us access into both the physical and the virtual servers. It's really important to remember that it's not at all uncommon for support groups to spend hours trying to understand why they've got an intermittent problem with either an application server or an integration server or a messaging server, only to find out that that intermittent problem was caused by changing load on the underlying VM. And they have no visibility into the VM. And so many hours are wasted trying to identify the problem. RTView provides you a very quick, very intuitive way to take a look at these technologies that are of interest to you, but they're not your responsibility. So here we've got a screen that shows us basically what's going on at a server level. And we need to remember that we have a knock-on effect here. We have multiple things dependent upon these servers. And generally, there's really no way to associate a host with an engine or a host with a queue. You need to have this information available to you immediately. So let's take a look at one of these host systems. We know that when we're looking at a VM, while we're looking at a physical host, the information is different to what we're used to. So it's reassuring to see that within RTView, the information is presented back to us in a way that's immediately familiar. So RTView takes the approach of providing sort of asset-based information. We talk about the demand on any particular resource, and then we have more detailed information about factors that are strictly related only to that type of technology. So this is all current information. And down here, we have the history, all combined on a single screen. This happens to be for a host system, but the same layout really applies for BW processors, for EMS queues, for active spaces, metaspaces. We keep the same kind of thought process behind all of these screens. So moving from one technology to another is very intuitive, very easy. Excuse me a second. So we need to pay attention to the peripheral servers. We need to look at the app servers and the database servers. After all, these are the systems that are regulating traffic into your environment. So you need to keep this information available to you. This really should be where you go to when you're trying to address any intermittent problem before you start drilling into any real depth on the TIBCO environment. Okay, we're all experienced with this, right? Normally, first area to get blamed is middleware, and generally speaking, it's not middleware. It's going to be one of these peripheral systems. And so it's good to keep an eye on these systems. It's good to be able to call the application group or the database group and say, are you aware that this is happening? So database systems, of course, can cause a backup on BW. This can have a knock-on effect to EMS. So we've all talked so far about how this information, how these resources are organized along application lines. And some of you are sitting there thinking, well, yeah, it's really good. I do understand. I do need to know about that. But day to day, I really care more about making sure my TIBCO environment is healthy. I know that if I can keep BW healthy, keep EMS healthy, then the applications that depend on those will be healthy. So RTView, as part of its profile, also provides operational views. So now here what we're looking at are the different services that you provide as an IT group. So these are the TIBCO centers. These are all organized along technology. So we have the ability to show resources and health state from an application perspective, but also from an operational perspective. So if the hat you're wearing is BW and EMS, then you're able to create screens and views that are just built around EMS and BW.
Thank you, Glyn. I just want to remind you, it's time is almost up. So.
Okay, thanks. So what we're also able to do is to take that information and present it out in flow diagram form. So we looked at dashboards, we looked at tables, but what we're also able to do is introduce the idea of data flowing through an application. And then we can drill down, we can start taking a look at the resources or the components, this time again indicating the flow. So we see here everything in the garden's nice and green, still looking good, but then when we bring in that history, we see that last 8 hours we've had quite a few problems, or maybe over the weekend we've had some problems. I'm just going to, thank you, Gio, just shoot ahead and basically wrap things up by saying that the RTView Enterprise Monitor is a perfect tool for monitoring all of the TIBCO technologies that you're responsible for, and combining that with information about those peripheral systems that you have a strong business interest in. So if there are any questions, Gia?
Thank you, Glyn. I would just like to remind everybody very quickly that we do have a recording of this webinar, and we will be sending that out within the next few days. We are out of time, but I'm going to ask you one question that did come in. Does RTView work in the cloud?
Absolutely. So we currently we're currently able to develop cloud-based systems so that we're able to monitor resources in the cloud. We will very shortly have a method of implementing RTView so that the RTView core sits within the cloud outside of your firewall, but all of the data stays within your firewall. So it's a kind of a hybrid configuration. But we'll be having another webinar in the near future that will focus in on this area.
Thank you so much, Glyn, and thank you everybody for joining us this morning. It looks like we are out of time. If you did submit questions, we will make sure we answer them, and I will email our responses after the webinar. Again, this webinar will be posted on our website next week, and we encourage you to visit us at www.sl.com or feel free to contact me directly at gmangino@sl.com. Thank you so much and have a great day. Thanks again, Glyn.
Thank you, Jan.